When For Honor was announced at E3 2015, it immediately caught my attention. The idea of a melee-driven, down-to-earth action game was refreshing, and the emphasis on slow but deadly combat reminded me of Bushido Blade. After playing both the closed and open betas, I was convinced to purchase this game on launch, certain that Ubisoft would fix the minor errors present in the beta. But in the 2 weeks that I've played For Honor, I've experienced little else than buyer's remorse. The single-player campaign is serviceable, although shallow. It tells the story of a medieval world wrought by a terrible cataclysm.
Doom came to us all.
And since then, 3 powerful neighboring societies, knights, Vikings, and samurai, have struggled for resources to survive. "1,000 years later, they finally begin to come to terms with the idea of peace, but Apollyon, one of the most powerful warlords of the Knights, wishes to flame the fires of war once again.
Who do you think you are?
War. I am war.
The story is well told, never getting too hung up on one particular subject. It features some cool fictional technology, and switching between the different factions helps to break up the pace, although the few attempts at humor fall pretty flat.
So? What did they tell you?
I don't speak Japanese.
Well, now what?
Not to mention the game pushes the idea of a linguistic barrier at first, but then completely drops it halfway through anyway.
Why did you call us here, Cross?
I didn't. I was sent by the new Lord Warden.
The gameplay, on the other hand, is basically just a beat 'em up. If you've ever played something like Scott Pilgrim, Double Dragon, Dragon's Crown, or The Warriors, then For Honor's campaign is the same idea. Beat up the bad guys, next area. Beat up the bad guys, next area. Don't get me wrong, I love beat 'em up games, but For Honor does not impress here. There's so little variety or interesting situations that it fails to hold my interest for very long. Most fights are predictable and boring because every opponent is approached in a similar manner, except for the guys with a shield. Those guys you're supposed to grab. Perhaps worst of all is how easy the whole game is. I played through it all on only the highest difficulty, and there was never a moment where I felt unprepared or worried that I might fail. A big part of that is because your character can heal themselves at any time with the ability Second Wind, and the game strongly recommends some sort of healing ability at all times. Without a healing ability, the player will need to perform almost flawlessly, but with a healing ability, the game becomes a cakewalk. It's by far one of the laziest forms of balancing I have ever seen in a single player game. It's like the developers couldn't decide what was too easy or too difficult, and instead just made it so that the player can't die easily. There are some great levels, like defending a battering ram from oncoming attackers or a battle against a ninja and his shadows, but these moments are few and far between. The campaign starts off strong, but the interest steadily wanes and eventually becomes a boring plot that's only barely worth playing through once. It's also worth noting that the campaign can be played in co-op, although I've never tried this feature myself. Of course, I could be forgiving of For Honor's lackluster single player as long as the multiplayer is up to snuff, but here again I have been left disappointed. The idea behind For Honor is a solid back and forth of attack, block, dodge, and counterattacks. By attacking, you signal yourself to your opponent who needs to block or dodge in the appropriate direction, and vice versa. It sounds good on paper, but the character balancing is all over the place. Peacekeeper and Orochi, for example, have such incredibly fast attacks that simply swinging in random directions is usually enough to win most battles, And not only is it difficult to react to these attacks, but the player's character actually needs enough time in advance to properly block. Then there's Raider, who can easily carry you off a ledge from several feet away from a simple grab. Nobushi can quickly and easily cause bleeding from long range, and Shugoki has a high risk, high reward one-shot kill attack. Instead of giving each character small advantages and different possible approaches, everyone instead has ridiculous strengths in specific situations, as if Ubisoft sought to balance everyone by making them all overpowered. Environmental hazards could have been used to keep the action exciting and drive battles in certain directions, but they only break the scales even further since the vast majority of them lead to easy kills. Conqueror, Warlord, and Raider can get free wins from a single grab with the geysers, and Shugoki on a narrow bridge is simply unbeatable. Which is why no one would actually fight Shugoki on a bridge except for the computer right now, and new players taken by surprise. Half of the game modes utilize Feats, which is similar to kill streaks in Call of Duty. After gaining enough points, your character gains access to a unique ability that is either passive and always active, or can be used with a long cooldown. While it sounds harmless enough, some of these feats, like the longbow, are incredibly punishing and nearly impossible to escape, while Heal on Block keeps characters with powerful defenses alive for even longer. Body count is especially ridiculous, as Conqueror can go from dying to full health in a snap, simply by attacking some defenseless AI soldiers. While these feats might encourage players to actively seek objectives and help their team to progress, I find that in practice, it just keeps the winning team winning. As if feats weren't enough, there are power-ups in certain game modes as well, which grant the holder improved offense, defense, speed, constant health regeneration, or instantly unlocks feats. Since this is a close combat melee-focused game, these power-ups greatly reward cowards who run at the possibility of failure and then come back for a second chance. Faster characters might be able to prevent this, but slower characters don't stand a chance. This isn't either fair or fun, it's just random and obnoxious, and it further breaks an already imbalanced game that only drives players to narrow the group of characters that they should select from. I've glossed over the controls and mechanics up to this point, but that too is another issue that should be addressed. It works well for the most part, but there are a couple of odd occurrences that keep it from being ideal. A grab can be used as a sort of fourth attack that cannot be blocked, although it can be escaped with another quick grab on reaction, similar to most fighting games. Although I'll manage to escape grabs the majority of the time, it simply will not work occasionally, and I've never understood why. Furthermore, I've noticed that two players grabbing each other at the same time will only act as an escape for both of them half the time, while the other half of the time, the grab will be awarded to one player or the other, seemingly at random. Locking onto an opponent is required to use the vast majority of attacks, and switching between opponents is done by locking off and then locking back on. But doing it too quickly doesn't work, and doing it too slow leaves you vulnerable. Dark Souls handled this just fine by switching targets with the right stick, but that doesn't work here since the right stick is used to aim. As such, dealing with multiple opponents is a hassle. In response to this, the revenge meter has been implemented to allow players who have been ganged up upon a massive but temporary increase to all of their stats, but veteran players will just back off in this situation until the revenge mode wears off. So the only ones who are taking advantage with this are new players who might not fully understand the rules of the game. These just feel like such inelegant solutions to problems that bog down an already hampered experience. The final icing on this rotten cake lies in the insultingly awful matchmaking. Whether it's finding other players or loading a map, the wait times are simply astonishing, and once a map finally does start, it's liable to suddenly end at any time. I swear that at least a fifth of all of my matches have led to an error. It also doesn't help that matching player skill, experience, or gear is just all over the place. And it blows my mind that For Honor simply does not care about this kind of thing in the slightest. The beta had similar issues, but I was hoping that the kinks would be ironed out for launch, at least in terms of online stability. At least then it wouldn't be such a struggle to get from one match to the next, but pile on a woefully imbalanced roster, annoying environmental hazards, power-ups and feats, imperfect clunky controls. There are so many pitfalls here. Maybe one of them being in this game wouldn't be so bad, but there are so many flaws that I'd rather just play something else. I'd say the 1 versus 1 duel is the best mode to play since it incorporates the fewest flaws, but you're still going to have light characters dominate in large open areas and heavy characters winning in tight quarters. And the way the maps rotate makes it seem like it's less like a fair fight and more like Russian roulette. The basic idea and the foundation of For Honor is wonderful. The themes behind the 3 factions is awesome, and there's quite a bit of variety here with 12 characters and 6 maps. But the game modes and balancing are more ambitious than the developers could handle, and the whole thing falls apart very quickly. I played this game non-stop since the closed beta, but the more I played, the more flaws I kept finding until I had enough. Oh yeah, and an online connection is required right from the title screen. Hopefully your network service doesn't have to undergo maintenance or anything like that, because then you won't even be able to play the single player campaign off of a physical disc that you legally purchased. Good job, Ubisoft. Well done. More content is planned for free down the line, including new characters and game types, but additional content isn't going to mean anything when the base game still needs work. I'm sure that For Honor is right up a lot of people's alley. It's easy to grasp, it looks beautiful, and there aren't too many games like it, which is exactly what got me to buy it in the first place. If you don't mind some wonky character balancing, some questionable controls, and you want a cool medieval action game, then give For Honor a try. I'm pretty sure this game is going to get a lot of fans, and I personally really wanted to like For Honor, but as it stands, it just feels like a lazy production that was released halfway through testing. Thanks for watching my review of For Honor. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe.